Well, at this point, guys, I'd like to believe that we already understood that or how the traditional courses, the traditional way of training, combat shooting, or learning how to fight with your firearms isn't really working, at least not as good as well as it should. If you're lost, let me provide a quick introduction. In the last days, we've been talking about four types of students. We talked about type 0, type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. Those types of students are my separation, my analysis of how different people react or how they behave when they are intending to learn some important skills, such as learn how to defend themselves. If you didn't see it, no worry, you can just click on the other videos since the beginning and watch anytime you want. I promised you that today we will talk about the combat triad, the triad of the ABA International methodology. But before we dive into this, please subscribe to this channel if you want to receive daily content on combat shooting. Please subscribe and turn on the notifications. Also, you can access abainternational.us, our website, where you will find plenty of content regarding combat shooting. So let's go. Our subject today is the combat triad. The combat triad stands for 3 points, 3 characteristics, 3 features, 3 items, 3 concerns that one must have in order to organize his routine, to training, to provide a training, to perform a training that goes from point A to point B, especially when it comes to combat shooting. Combat shooting should not be confused with sports shooting or with any other kind of shooting. Combat shooting, remember, is the branch of combat that intends to kill. We train to kill, never forget that. When I wrote the book Introduction to Combat Shooting, you can find it on our website, on Google Books and so on, and you can purchase yours if you want. I wrote about how we can define the first step of the triad, that is the technique. Let me show you how is or what is our triad. Just a sec. Triad, the TMM triad, 35. Whoops. Here we go. I'll be there. Here it is. Can you see that? The triad is formed by these 3 items. Technique, about which we're going to talk today, method, and metric. We'll talk about the metrics tomorrow, and the day after we'll talk about the method or the methodology, right? So technique, imagine if you look for some kind of technique on your YouTube, on your Google, among your partners during a shooting at your shooting range, I'm pretty sure that we'll find several ways to perform the same task. For example, you will find people who grips their pistol in a certain way and other people who perform this skill differently. In the same manner, we will find people who perform their reloads in a certain way and other people who prefer to do that differently. But we must agree that between or among these techniques, there must be one that is the best option. There is the optimal when it comes to combat shooting. And sometimes this technique isn't the same technique that should be used, for example, for a sports shooter or something like that. And then when you access the page 34 of the introduction to combat shooting book, you'll find this image right here that tells us what are the main points that one should consider in order to choose between techniques. I am not the one who is going to say once and for all what or which technique is the best, but when you consider these principles that were taught to help you to choose between the techniques, of course, we will achieve at least a very close conclusion amongst the techniques available. So, what are those principles? Let's go. First, simplicity or efficiency. There will always be several ways to perform something, but again, our goal is to perform or to achieve something putting the less effort as possible, right? This means efficiency. If you can do something in a simple way, never allow it to become complex. Simple like that. If it can be simple, don't allow it to become complex. Second, resilience. When it comes to your practice on the shooting range, with good illumination, with no one shooting against you, with a target that usually is still, or when you're shooting at a paper, you must agree that it's much easier for you to develop or to use a technique that will work. On the other hand, when you're shooting at enemies and not against a paper, these techniques may not be helpful. So we must look for techniques that can present this important principle, this important characteristic, that is resilience. Which techniques will allow you to perform them under pressure? When everything is going sideways, your techniques must work. It is not as easy as it may seem. Third, combat-oriented development. As stated before, we have a lot of reasons for one to shoot. We have the sports shooters, we have hunters, we have people who shoot just for fun, and so on. It is important that the technique you choose to train, to enhance your skills, or to enhance your chances of surviving a lethal threat situation, these techniques must be taught from the beginning to be a technique used on a combat, not on a championship, not for fun. Of course, some of techniques that are used on combat was maybe created before for sports shooting, but they must be adapted and must be tested in order to see if they will fit into a combat situation. Fourth, adaptability for multiple platforms. And this is a funny story. I always use this example with my students. If you go to a range and ask someone to shoot a pistol, it is very likely that this guy will just hold the pistol and shoot it very naturally. And then you ask him, now do it as quick, as fast as you can. And immediately this guy will change his position. Then you give this guy a rifle, AR-15 for example. And this guy will change his posture, his stance a little bit. And now you tell him, please do your best cadence now. And then this guy becomes all contracted. And then you give this guy a 7.62 and you put it on full auto and tell him, guy, man, let's do some full auto shooting today. And this guy now is completely down with his weapon, trying to provide the best stance he can. So, if we understand that the last one was the last stance, why this guy wasn't training only the last one instead of the first, the second, the third? Does it make sense? Of course, if you're doing a very aggressive stance for shooting a pistol, it is very likely that you are overreacting. I'm not sure if it is the best word, but I think you understand. If you are doing a very aggressive stance for shooting a pistol with a small caliber such as 9, for example, it's very likely that you really don't need it. But if you can train the exactly same movement for a pistol, for a different kind of pistols, for a shotgun, for a rifle, no matter which caliber we are talking about, why would you spend your time? That is the most important thing. The most important is what you have of more valuable. Why would you waste your time training 3 different stances when you can train just one that will fit all these problems, these issues that you may have? Does it make sense? The same thinking may apply to different skills when it comes to combat shooting. Generalization, the 5th principle. Generalization stands for means that some technique may work for everyone. If you see, for example, let me think, any competitor, maybe, what's the name of that guy? I forgot, but let's use an example. A champion of any kind of sports shooting, right? I am pretty sure that this guy may use some kind of technique that most people can't reproduce, can't mimic. Does it make sense? We'll find people having great results doing some weird techniques. It doesn't mean that you should try to mimic them, because these techniques were developed by them, for them. It is important for you, when you choose between techniques, that you choose that one that will be used or may be used to the most different people as you can think, as you can imagine. You will find techniques that will fit people who have large, huge hands. But how would you teach a girl to use that technique? Does it make sense? If you can do something extraordinary, this is good for you. But I recommend that we're trying to learn, not to learn to mimic something that works just for one or two people in the entire world. Generalization, therefore, means that you should prefer a technique that can be used for the most people as possible. Lastly, but not less important, transferability. There are techniques again that may seem that people are tripping. People invent techniques. I'm not sure from where they they are taking these techniques, where they get it, but you find some stuff on the shooting ranges that are simply unbelievable. And when this guy tries to transfer that knowledge, that skill that he developed only on the shooting range through a combat, it is a mess. It is a mess, right? It is important that your technique that you are training on the range can be transferred to outside of the range. We train in the range, but our objective, our goal is to use that techniques in the real life. Does it make sense? It is pointless, therefore, for you to train something that works only on your shooting range. Transferability. These are the general principles that I recommend you to use when trying to figure out which of the techniques you saw you should use. Does it make sense for you? Let me know your comments, let me know your thoughts. Leave your comments right here, and please don't forget to share this content so other people can share their opinions as well, and maybe we can learn something together. I hope to see you tomorrow when we will talk about the second characteristic of the ABA combat methodology, triad, right? See you there.